Hello everyone, and welcome to Lancelot's Nerd Corner, where I'm proud to present my very first 6th scale figure review. Today, we'll be taking a look at Black Suit Superman by ByArt, and I'm really excited to share my thoughts on it with you. Now, this is a third-party unlicensed figure, so it's officially titled and marketed as Black Transcendent, but the likeness, suit, and inspiration is clearly from Zack Snyder's Justice League, in which Superman, played by Henry Cavill, is resurrected by the newly formed Justice League and dons this black suit before he arrives to help. And with the Hot Toys 2-pack of Nightmare Batman and Superman coming out, this version of Superman by ByArt provides an impressive and worthy alternative that won't make your wallet cry. Starting off with the box itself, it's rather simple and not too much to write home about. The front of the box features just the silhouette of Superman and has the name and ByArt logo printed near the bottom. Twice more, Black Transcendent is printed on either side, and the back has the usual warnings, as well as another silhouette of an invisible Superman. I don't remember that being one of his powers. Anyway, let's get this thick boy out here and see what we've got. The very first thing you'll notice about the figure out of the box is the weight. It is an incredibly heavy and dense figure compared to what you usually get with 6th scale figures. The entire body is made out of a solid, hard plastic that is very dense and does not feel hollow, which is probably why the figure is so heavy. But the body itself does have some upside, namely the fact that it's fully sculpted with large detailed muscles that ripple through the skin-tight suit. It really gives you the sense of an imposing and intimidating Superman, which are mainly the vibes I'm getting from this figure, thanks in large part to these head sculpts. The figure comes with one semi-neutral but also sort of angry head sculpt, and one laser eye head sculpt, which does light up. The battery compartment is slotted inside the head, which you can pull out, unscrew at the top, and insert your batteries into. The eyes are translucent, but the lights themselves are bright enough that they shine through a little bit around the eyes and will stand out even in well-lit conditions. However, they're only designed to last a few seconds before they turn off and you have to tap the head again to turn them on, which might suggest that the light-up feature is probably only meant for pictures and not long-term posing. Overall, the quality of the sculpt work on both head sculpts is great, and they really capture the likeness of Henry Cavill. The hair is sculpted really well with great detailing. The paint application adds a lot of skin texturing throughout the entire face, with a tiny bit of dark shading along the jawline that resembles a very light stubble. And there is a slight bulge at the back ends of the jawline, which makes it look like he's clenching his jaw, adding to the more angrier looking expression. Speaking of which, I personally don't mind the furrowed brow angry expression of this head sculpt, especially given the quality, but I would have really appreciated a more neutral look. I feel like ByArt got the vibes of this figure mixed up with the Nightmare version of Superman that we saw in Batman vs Superman and the epilogue of Justice League, which is even more evident given the diorama display base this figure comes with. Whereas the Superman that we see in the latter mentioned film is a lot more calm and reflective, as if appreciating the second chance at life he's been given. And I would have really liked if we got a head sculpt that was more accurate to that version of Superman that this figure's suit is based on. The suit is skin tight and made out of a stretchy, thin fabric, in line with what you would see from the Hot Toys Superman. It has a pattern printed throughout the entire suit that sort of looks like chainmail, which reflects subtly and nicely in the light, giving off the vibes that this suit is Superman's armor. Some parts of the suit are printed with different accent patterns or overlays, specifically around the biceps, the forearms, going down the obliques, and continuing down the thighs, all of which are screen accurate by the way. Just like how the thigh and oblique overlays meet in the middle with a silver line resembling a belt going around his waist and what even looks like a belt buckle in the middle. If you look closely, you can see a strange pattern printed on them that looks consistent with the alien designs in the movies. Apart from that, the only other silver accent piece on the suit is, of course, the Superman logo. It's screen accurate and consistent with other Superman figures with the inscription in the middle, and has that same chainmail looking pattern throughout. Much like other Superman figures, you do have the issue of the skin-tight suit bunching up around areas of articulation, like the shoulders, elbows, and ankles. You also want to be very careful to adjust the suit when articulating certain joints, especially the knee joint, where you may run the risk of ripping or otherwise damaging the fabric. Moving on to the back side of the figure, and no, I'm not talking about these juicy buttocks. Let's talk about the cape, because this is something that, unfortunately, I'm pretty disappointed with. First of all, the cape itself feels wonderful. It's very silky and flowy and soft to the touch, and it is double layered, so it's not just one single piece of fabric. Unfortunately, those are really the only good things I can say about the cape. It only has 2 wires, one on each side of the cape, and they're not very strong at all, so they end up just flopping down and eliminating almost all potential posability. I think 1 or 2 more wires around the middle of the cape could have helped, but the ultimate fix would have been to just use better, stronger wires. Alternatively, they could have done away with the wires altogether and opted for a draped look, which is another problem with this cape. Because you have wires down the sides of it, you can't achieve a proper or natural looking drape. So instead of having either a dynamic wired cape or a sleek draped one, you sort of just end up with the worst of both worlds. Apart from the cape, the only other thing that I feel is a real issue with the figure are the ankle pegs, because they are simply not strong enough to hold up the figure. And combined with the heavy hard plastic body, this figure cannot handle its own weight, at least not standing straight up. You may have more success when you widen the stance and lower its center of gravity, but even then, I wouldn't trust the ankle pegs to hold the pose for very long. That being said, however, there is one little caveat that I think throws all this concern out the window, which is that I'm pretty sure ByArt fully intended for this figure not to be posed standing, but to be posed flying in the air thanks to this incredible diorama display base and magnetic flight pole. This diorama display base is simply unbelievable. It's a fully sculpted and incredibly detailed piece depicting a mound of rubble scattered with all types of materials like bricks, stone, concrete, and various metal pipes throughout. The paint finishes look tremendous for each of the various types of materials and really make the scene come to life. I'm not entirely sure what it's made out of. It feels like a hardened clay or resin type of material because, much like the figure, it's very solid and quite heavy. Along with the display base itself, it comes with 3 additional large pieces that slot into specific areas, 2 destroyed brick walls, and a cracked Justice League sign, which have the same quality of paint application and finishing as the rest of the base. The 2 brick walls have these metal wires jutting out of them that do add more character, but may also harm your hands and fingers, so try to be careful when handling these accessories. Additionally, when posing the cape behind the brick walls, try not to move the cape too quickly as it may get snagged on those metal wires and may even rip the cape. The brick walls have magnets on the bottom that correspond to 2 magnets on either side of the display base, while the sign simply slots in at the back. We're still not finished because you may notice a few holes throughout the surface of the base, and those are for these cracked metal pieces for you to slot into. It doesn't actually say exactly which piece fits into which hole, so you may have to just test each piece, but the instruction sheet does have an image of the fully accessorized base, and since all of these metal pieces are rather distinct, it should make it a bit easier to tell. Lastly, there are these small metal wires that you can twist and bend to your own liking, but they don't slot into the display base. Rather, they're meant to be strewn across the surface of it. And personally, I'm not really comfortable with that for safety reasons, so I've decided to omit them completely. Other than that though, this thing is simply outstanding. I had never owned a figure that came with a diorama display base, and now I don't think I'll ever own one that will top this. Now we're going to talk about another thing that comes with this display base that is really worth discussing, which is the magnetic dynamic flight pole. That's right, instead of using a regular old waist clamp, ByArt went with a magnetic attachment. If I unzip the back of Superman's suit here, you can see there are 2 magnets around the middle of his back that correspond to the magnets on the flight pole. Now, the magnets themselves are actually pretty strong, which was the most worrisome thing about this for me. There's a noticeable snap to the pole when you put the magnets close to one another, it doesn't wiggle around too much if bumped, and it actually requires a bit of force to separate the figure from the pole. I'm still not too sure about the long-term strength of the magnets, however. Like, how long will the magnets stay like this before they can't properly hold up the weight of this thick boy? Which, by the way, is another reason why I don't understand ByArt's decision to go with this really heavy, hard plastic body. If you want to ensure the longest possible use of the magnetic flight stand, surely a much lighter body would help with that. Unfortunately, that's something that we'll just have to wait and see. Okay, the very last thing about the display base that we have is the extension for the flight pole, which comes in the form of a rusted metal pole, very consistent with the theme. It is made out of actual metal, which is pretty cool, but also means you can't bend this one. With the extension pole screwed in, you can achieve a proper flying/hovering pose for Superman, which looks so friggin' good. Whereas without it, you can have him actually standing on the rubble or just barely floating above it. One last word of warning about the magnetic flight pole: if you're going to be using the extension to have him flying, I recommend keeping him in a straight up flying pose rather than flying horizontally or anything like that, because the sheer weight of the body may put undue stress on the magnets and may make it more susceptible to falling off if, say, the display's bumped or something. Now that we got the diorama display base and all its additional parts out of the way, let's talk about the accessories, which there really aren't much of. The figure only comes with 3 extra pairs of hands and the laser eye head sculpt, which we already covered. For the hands, we have 1 pair of neutral hands, 1 pair of open palm hands, and 1 pair of gripping hands. Although it doesn't come with anything for the hands to grip. The only thing I could think of was the extension pole, which actually looks pretty badass, but I would not recommend doing that. All the hands are made out of a soft rubber, and they all have this subtle light shade of pink on the knuckles, as if he's been punching a bunch of bad guys, and his knuckles have reddened as a result, which is just awesome attention to detail and storytelling. To finish up this review, let's check out the surprisingly great articulation of this figure. The head unfortunately can barely look up, and from most angles it kinda just looks like he's staring straight ahead, but he has a ton of room to look down, tilt side to side, and can swivel so that he's pretty much looking directly to each side. The arms can be raised up laterally around 80 degrees, they can swing forward to just about 90, and can swing backward around 80 degrees as well. In general, the stretchy nature of the suit's fabric allows a bit more leeway in the shoulder joint, but just be careful about leaving the arms in that kind of pose for too long. There is no swivel on the bicep, but the elbows can hinge to 90 degrees, and that's where you can swivel the arms. One little issue though is that since the arms are sculpted with such detail and there's no independent swivel at the bicep, when you swivel at the elbow, it just looks like he broke his arm terribly, because no human or Kryptonian can make their forearm parallel to the side of their arm. The torso is one solid piece, so there's no crunch forward or extension backward, but you can swivel it side to side. The legs raise up laterally surprisingly well at around 80 degrees, can swing forward at around 70 degrees, but can only swing backwards around 30 before it collides with those juicy buttocks. The knees have a double bend, but you can't really take advantage of that as the calf collides with the hamstring at around 90 degrees. Lastly, the ankles can swing upwards a ton, but not too much going the other way. There's a lot of room to swivel side to side, but because it's not on a ball joint, it cannot swing side to side. When I started collecting a couple of months ago, I saw this figure and thought to myself, I have to have that figure. And now that I have it in my room, floating above a mound of rubble, I couldn't be happier. It's clear that ByArt got the vibes a little mixed up with the nightmare scenes in BVS and Justice League, but I genuinely don't believe it's much of an issue at all. And yes, they made some questionable decisions on the overall build of the figure itself, namely the body and the cape, but you can tell that the costs they saved on the figure, they put directly into the supreme sculpt work, paint app, and overall quality of the diorama display base, and all of this at an incredibly reasonable price point. Plus, I really feel like I have to give ByArt some points just for being daring enough to use a magnetic flight pole, which I can honestly see being a widely adopted option in the future. So, for all those reasons, I'm gonna rate Black Transcendent by ByArt a 4-star figure. A must-have for Superman or DC fans who want an impressive and worthy depiction of Henry Cavill's black suit Superman without breaking the bank. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a great day, and I will see you in my next video.